So I've said for a long time and repeatedly on this show that there are a lot of things similar between the NFL and college football, and they've never been more alike than they are right now. But there are some stark differences between the two. And I think one of the biggest differences between the NFL and college football would be the fan bases, would be the home field advantage. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in the NFL. I just think it's that more wild in college. One, because they seat more people, and you've got students who are basically outraged in a good way sometimes and in a bad way during games. But I will say this, there are elite fan bases in the NFL. I think that the Seattle Seahawks have an elite fan base. I think the Cleveland Browns, even though they've shown nothing but ineptitude for a while, have an elite fan base. I think the Steelers have an elite fan base, and I definitely think that the Philadelphia Eagles have an elite fan base. And this is where I want to land. And I want to ask you guys a question. Is there really friction in Philadelphia? And let me give you a backstory, and let me give you just some foundational information on this. So I think in 2020, you could easily say that that was a transition year for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right? Because in 2020, what happened? Doug Peterson was in his final year. He got fired at the end of that season, brought in Nick Sirianni in January of 21. Carson Wentz was in his last season as starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He ended up getting benched for, at that time, rookie Jalen Hurts, who finished out that season. And that team was woeful, and they were under 500. Now, moving on from 2021 until the present, do you know that the Philadelphia Eagles have a record of 59-26 in terms of the regular season? They've won 2 NFC titles. They've won 1 Super Bowl. And during that span, they've been able to draft people like Jalen Hurts, like Devontae Smith, like Quinyon Mitchell, like Cooper DeJean, like Jalen Carter, like Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith. They've drafted a litany of top-tier talent. Shout out to Howie Roseman in that front office. And not only that, they were able to sign guys in free agency like Saquon Barkley. They've had 5 offensive coordinators and 4 defensive coordinators during that span, and 3 of those former assistants are now head coaches in the NFL. 3 of them. And now they're dealing with a bunch of losses in free agency this offseason with Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship and Jalen Phillips and Azeez Ojulari and so many changes in Philly. And yet this team has been a model of consistency. So it begs the question of why is this a question of whether or not there's friction in Philadelphia? And I think what happens is a lot of times when you reach this level and this pinnacle of success, you've seen it with the Kansas City Chiefs, you've seen it with the New England Patriots, people expect more. And Philly fans expect more just because they're Philly fans, ladies and gentlemen. If you know any Philadelphia fans or you understand how the fan base works, or even if you're a baseball fan in this part of the country, in Georgia, and you're a Braves fan, you understand how Philadelphia Phillies fans are. So those are the same people that root for the Eagles. I was reading some articles on this, and, former offensive coordinator Kevin Patula, who's no longer the offensive coordinator now, they brought in Sean Mannion, another offensive coordinator that Jalen Hurts has to deal with, and another change that Philadelphia has to deal with, which is not easy, which is why, to me, winning in this league is that much more difficult without any type of cohesion. It's hard enough to win in the NFL when things are consistent. But with the churn and the turnover that's inevitable, especially what you see in Philadelphia, it makes it that much more amazing in my estimation that they've been winning. But I was reading these articles, and it talked about during the playoff loss in the wild card round for Philadelphia when they were trying to determine and trying to decide on what was going to be a 4th down play that they ran, and they didn't know necessarily what they wanted to call, if Jalen Hurts wanted the input, Nick Sirianni was looking at all these other moving parts. And this is what I know. When you get to this level, people don't just want you to win, they want you to win in a certain way. And I think a lot of times that's what causes the issues. Because what has Philadelphia really done wrong? I know there was a season a few years ago where they started 10-1 and really just bottomed out. And then the very next season, the subsequent year, what did they do? They won the Super Bowl. So I don't think friction is a bad thing. First, let me say that. I don't think issues are a bad thing because I think that conflict is a good thing because it leads to conflict resolution. I think that as grown men and women that are running this organization, I think that you have to understand how to be professional. I think that you have to understand that you have to work through these things. And I think that you have to understand that even though you may not be the best of friends off the field, you come to work every day to do a job. And I think that's okay. All of those things to me are normal. That's the way I look at life. That's the way I look at the NFL. So is there friction in Philly? I think there is some friction because there has to be in order for things to get better. Plus, you have seen some signs with A.J. Brown. We don't know whether he's going to get traded this offseason. We don't know what's going to happen with this situation. So there is friction. I'm not sitting here telling you that there isn't friction. I'm sitting here asking you, is the friction at the level in which a lot of people think it is? Is it at a 10 if 1 means nothing and 10 means everything. I don't think so. And if it is, that makes me feel even more confident about the Philadelphia Phillies, because if you're able to operate in this type of mess, then you're doing something. Now, having said that, I do think that cohesion matters. I think camaraderie matters. And if those are being broken up, if those are being manipulated, if those are being compromised, then you have to continue to grow. But remember, you can bring back the same 53-man roster, the same exact coaching staff from one year to the next, and it will still be a different team, because mindsets change, situations change, family dynamics change. All of that stuff changes. Nothing is the exact same. So friction in Philadelphia may be present, but it's present everywhere in the NFL. This has been an organization that's been able to handle it. And no matter what you think they should be, based on where they actually are, you have to give them credit, because they've been running this thing at an optimal level, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. As much as people want to think Nick Sirianni is a terrible coach, he's been able to manage this. Can he get better? Absolutely. But I think Philadelphia is the type of organization that has shown you they'll get rid of coaches who have won Super Bowls. So for me, that means that they're never, ever comfortable. And I think that's one of the biggest traits for championship-level organizations in any sport, especially in the NFL.